Great, Alice Ó'Sé. Thank you so much for joining me here today on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Before we dive into what's going to be a really interesting conversation for me, I would like to define maybe a few terms from your world and from your expertise, just so people know what we're going to talk about. And it's really, really clear when we're discussing some of these terms. Could we start with intimacy? What does intimacy mean?
So yeah, often when people use the word intimacy, they use it as a stand-in word for sex. Sometimes they don't want to say sex, so they'll say intimacy. I don't know if you've ever seen Married at First Sight. It's so funny on that show. They'll be like, we had intimacy last night. It's like, just say sex, just say sex. So intimacy, essentially, the way I would understand it is that feeling of being very close with someone. So that could be true physical closeness, but it's more of an emotional closeness. It's where you kind of feel that there's some vulnerability there on both sides. So to me, that's intimacy. That doesn't have to be sexual at all. You can have an intimate moment with a friend, anyone, you know. But I suppose, yeah, intimacy, when I'm talking about it, usually in my work, if I use the word intimacy, I'm not usually talking about specifically sex. I'm just talking about that feeling of closeness with your partner.
Okay.
Yeah,
Lovely.
That's how I would describe it.
Perfect. Okay. And one of the things we'll also explore is maybe intimacy with yourself as well. So
yes, of course. Yeah.
Which would be fascinating. Sex is another word that in this country especially is a big red flag and trigger for lots of different people. You get lots of reactions.
Yes.
Would you mind just exploring that word sex? Because people think of sex sometimes in really binary terms. Sex is reproduction. And other people have a broad understanding of what the word sex means.
Yeah.
From your perception and expertise and experience, what does the word sex mean?
Yeah, so I like to be as specific as possible, right? So if I'm talking about having sex, I'm talking about having a sexual experience with someone. So that the way I sometimes describe sex is basically two consenting adults giving each other pleasure or touching each other. And whatever way that looks, that counts as sex. You know, whether it's oral sex or, again, touching each other, whatever it is. Basically, we're trying to move away from that idea that sex is penetration, that there has to be one body part going into another body part for it to count as sex. Because, you know, there is all that language around being a virgin and losing your virginity. And it's all centered around penetration, like just one moment of penetration, which is bizarre. Like sex is so much bigger than that. So I'm very specific when I'm talking. If I want to make a point about penetrative sex, which sounds really unromantic and unsexy, I don't use this language with my partner, just to clarify. But professionally, I say penetrative sex if that's what I'm actually talking about. Does that make sense? So then
Absolutely.
Sex is so much broader than that. And the broader we are, I think sometimes the better, because we're not hemming ourselves into what counts as sex, what is proper sex, because that can cause a lot of problems when then people are struggling to have penetrative sex for many different reasons.
Do you find that people in relationships, casual or long-term relationships, do they struggle with terminology sometimes as well? Is it sometimes the terminology that can cause some of the issue with people in terms of how to communicate with each other about sex or having sex or what that means, or intimacy? Are we intimate, or do we even understand what intimacy means?
I think so. I think, again, sometimes we're not being very specific. Maybe there's some shame there around expressing what we need, or maybe there's just uncertainty about what am I trying to ask for here? What am I trying to say? So again, even with sex, a lot of couples would be, now this would be particularly with heterosexual couples, but they'd be over-focused on penetrative sex, that if they're not doing that X amount of times, then they're not having a good sex life. You know, that's nearly the top of the hierarchy when it comes to types of sex. And usually for one partner, or sometimes both partners, I often do this. I ask couples if they are struggling with sex or desire or anything. I get them to do this little reflective exercise to start. And I ask them, why do you have sex? Like, tell me why you have sex. What does it bring to your life? And there could be so many answers to that. Like, it sounds like an obvious question. Why do people? But there's actually loads of answers. Could be like they feel obligated. Sometimes I hear that, kind of feel it's something I should do, or it's stress relief, or there's so many different reasons. But more often than not, people will say, I have sex to feel closer to my partner, to connect with my partner, and also to experience pleasure. So connection and pleasure will be the two reasons that come up. And what often happens is when we have an issue with sex, we lose sight of that the whole goal here is connection and pleasure. So if we're focusing on, no, we have to have this type of sex and we have to have it this amount of times, we're shifting the focus onto numbers and specific acts, and we're losing sight of this should be fun, this should be enjoyable, this should be a source of, again, connection and pleasure.
Okay.
So if that answers your question
Absolutely,
at all,
yeah.
in a roundabout way, I think the terminology does actually cause a bit of, I would say it's more of a lack of literacy around sex and the erotic and all those things.
Okay.
Which a lot of us have.
Especially in this country.
Yes, exactly.
Is that, I know this is a cliche, and I'll probably say it a lot during the conversation, but in your experience, it's not limited to this country, I'm sure there's other countries like this, but is it quite characteristic of Ireland and our culture to be a little bit squeamish around sex and conversations around sex?
Oh, 100%. Like, I often say, I'm not a historian, so I don't have the exact years and figures, but I don't have to be one to say that, like, our history in Ireland, our recent history around sex in Ireland, so let's say the last few hundred years, really dark. Like the way, women were treated, unmarried mothers specifically, what a term, unmarried mothers were treated, LGBT people, and men as well. Like sex was just seen as this kind of thing you did within a marriage, and anything outside was sinful, and masturbation was sinful. And like even my mom's what? I think she's 72-ish now. And like even when she was a teenager, she was told, like, if you enjoy it, it's a sin. She was told that by the nuns at school.
If you enjoy sex, it's a sin.
So any kind of sexual thing, if you are enjoying it, it's a sin. So basically pleasure is a sin.
Okay.
If you're just having it because your husband wants it and you're giving it, then that's not a sin,
Or
but
just
if you're
to have
enjoying
a child
it,
or whatever, not a sin.
Exactly. So like completely warped way. And although we can sit here in 2025 and say, Jesus, isn't that mad and isn't that awful? And wow, we're so far away from that. It's not that long ago. And like, there's generations of that was built, like shame that's been passed down. So it's going to take time to dismantle that. And we absolutely have made great progress. But like, basically, if you still feel a bit like uncomfortable around sex, I mean, I have loads of clients who feel uncomfortable around sex. Some people can barely say the word still. That's very understandable. Like you're coming from that culture going back years. So it's going to take time culturally to really move on from that.
Absolutely, yeah. I'd love to. I have it on the sheet here to dive into the shame and cultural side of things, but just to round up our little classification section.
Yes.
You are an educator, a sex and intimacy educator and coach.
Yeah.
I know sometimes because I meet a lot of coaches in a lot of different spaces in the work that I do, and from being from the kind of medical background as well. But sometimes I'm speaking to people and they see titles like that, and it really confuses them because like, hold on, a sex coach, and you know immediately what comes into people's minds when they hear that phrase.
Yeah, of course.
And to be honest with you, that's the majority of people who hear that kind of phrase, and it's combined with this uncomfortable,
I know,
that kind of thing. Would you give us a bit of a definition around that and the work that you do? And I know there's several different maybe titles and
of course,
areas people work in.
I probably use the term educator more for that reason, because I think coaching can sound very like practical and prescriptive.
Get your boots on,
I
head
know,
down to training
exactly.
on a Tuesday.
Me going into people's bedrooms. Now, there are people who do that. Like that's a whole job, but I don't know how commonplace they are in Ireland. But I suppose I like to use the term sex educator as much as I can, because that's what I'm doing. I'm providing an education around not just sex and sex acts. Actually, a lot of my work doesn't involve talking about the ins and outs of certain sex acts. It's more about, as we said, dismantling shame, about finding out what works for you and what makes you tick as a sexual being. And I think education sums up that the best, because even when I'm working with clients one-to-one and work with couples, I can give, obviously, again, education of, here are these different types of desire. This might be the type of desire you resonate with. But ultimately, it's about them learning about themselves. That's really what's happening. I can't teach you about yourself, but I can help you by asking you the right questions. And that'll help you learn. Because a lot of people come to me being like, I don't know what I like. I don't know what I'm into. I don't know what I want. That's very common.
Okay.
So sorry, to define it, I don't have an exact definition to hand, but that's the best I can do.
No, it's perfect.
Yeah. Because my coaching, like I've done a sex relationships coaching course, and it has greatly informed my work. And I come from an occupational therapy background as well, which is quite similar to coaching in ways. So it's more, that's something I draw on. rather than being like, right, we have 3 really specific goals that we want you to meet. It's very hard to have specific goals when it comes to sex and intimacy, you know.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the way you're encouraged to be like, have these specific goals in exercise or whatever that like, I will train 3 times a week or whatever. Like, you can't really do that.
Yeah,
well, you can, but I wouldn't recommend doing that,
No.
taking that approach to sex.
No, I really enjoy that definition there because my background, I might have shared it before, I was trained as a physiotherapist originally. You trained as an occupational therapist. My fiance is an occupational therapist, worked in the medical industry. And a lot of the way that we are trained, especially in the health and wellness sphere, is very diagnostic, checkbox. Here are the symptoms, tick these boxes equals D. Someone comes in, they have sprained their ankle, this is the issue, here's the exercise you need to do. But what I started to realize very quickly working in that industry is in most cases, it's never the thing that someone presents with.
Yeah.
It's, I won't say never, but rarely. It's generally a collection of underlying symptoms. And pain was an interesting one for me. It was the first place I learned this. It was almost always psychological with people.
Okay.
And it was to do with the quality of relationships, which is mad to say. The stress of their job, how they viewed themselves, their self-image. And that directly impacted their pain.
Yeah.
And when you spoke
Makes
to people
sense.
about that and they vented on that, all of a sudden their pain started to clear up and they weren't doing their exercise. And I was like, there's something going on here.
Yeah.
In the medical industry, I found it very, very similar. We ran a functional medicine clinic and most, I say it all the time on this podcast, but most of the, I'd say 80% of the change in people came from the basics.
Yeah.
Which I just named, improving their relationships, managing their stress,
Yeah.
getting better sleep,
Yes.
and then a sense of understanding of themselves. And that really helped their outcomes. So it's very interesting to hear you say the same thing. And I know about occupational therapy, it's, some people struggle, I struggle to define occupational therapy sometimes. And so
I
did you
can't even
sometimes.
define it, so don't ask me, please.
Thank you. But when I watch how Jill approaches, she works pediatrics specifically.
Yeah.
Her approach is very holistic, is a dirty word nowadays. I'm going to use it anyway, though. It's
I like it.
It's all encompassing. It gets a bad
It
rap.
is. It does, because people misuse it.
The
but
tickets waving candles and dancing
and
around a
sage
tree.
and everything, yeah.
Which is fine.
Which
it has
is
a place.
fine, absolutely, yeah.
But the approach I see her take is very similar to what you described there.
Yeah.
Helping these people understand a little bit more about themselves and developing skills that suit them and figuring out, is a big one for me, like what actually is the goal?
Yeah.
What's the outcome
exactly.
we're looking for here?
Yeah.
And until we know that, we can't really move in any direction because we don't know what direction we're going in.
Exactly. And like those goals can change, I find, when you're working with a client. They might start out and be like, you know, I want to have a higher sex drive. And I'm always like, oh, like that's a really complex one because so many things like what you described impact your libido and your sex drive. But then as we progress, and again, there's education on, you know, me providing education around how it could look and different types of desire and different ways relationships can look, and them learning more about themselves, the goal can change along the way. It can be like, actually, do you know what? I don't necessarily want to have more sex. I want to enjoy the sex I'm having more. So it shifts and gets to a healthier place then, where you're not again focusing on numbers and what should I be doing. But yeah, I would say my approach is fairly holistic as well. Like I would be asking people about things like that, their sleep, their stress management, even like their relationship with their phone, their boundaries in life, their boundaries with phone use, with their kids, with their partners, with their family. That all feeds into sex and intimacy and being able to be like present in your body. Like there's so many things from so many different directions, I think, that you have to consider.
Absolutely. Yeah. This has been actually a really natural segue into my first kind of major question, which is the idea of that relationship with yourself and how much that impacts your relationship with another person.
Yeah.
And I like what you said there about the boundary piece as well. If someone comes in and says to you, I would like to have more sex, in my completely uneducated, unexperienced opinion, the chances are quite high what they're looking for is potentially more connection or a better relationship. It might not be the more sex, but the more sex is the language piece that they have.
Exactly. Yeah.
If we're having more sex, that means a better relationship.
Yeah.
We used to get a lot of people come in who would say things like, or random things like, I'd like to have lower body fat. But it wasn't actually the body fat, it was a sense of confidence in themselves.
Yeah, sure, that's people are chasing, isn't it?
It's what they're looking for, I mean, I've a lot of connections in the kind of sport world as well, and you can see a direct link between some companies and businesses will prey on a sense of insecurity in people, telling them that you will be happy when you have a six-pack and bigger muscles.
Yeah.
But what they're actually poking at is that person's sense of identity or their insecurities. It's generally not a physical thing.
No.
It's a slightly deeper thing. So it's probably similar here.
Yeah.
So with that relationship with yourself,
Mm-hmm.
again, sounds like a funny thing for people to hear sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
In our space, it's quite normal. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
when you're talking to a lot of people
I
about
know.
how they feel about themselves, it's probably quite normal to say,
100%.
how do you feel about yourself?
Yeah.
But can we explore that a little bit
Yeah.
about how some of the challenges that you might see for people, men and women, anybody who comes in to see you, when it comes to themselves, does that come up a lot when people come in and maybe they tell you one thing, but do you find that people are actually struggling with themselves a little bit more often than they might think?
Yeah, definitely. And I think when we think of sex, we think of it in the context of a partnership or a relationship, or like basically involving another person. But your sexual self exists in you as you are, you know? And then when you share it with another person, you create this sexual relationship with them. Again, whether it's a casual thing, committed, it doesn't matter. And that's lovely. But, you know, I often describe it, again, this is very unerotic, but as a Venn diagram. So, you know, you
love a good Venn diagram.
Yeah, exactly. So you have a circle over here and a circle over here. This circle over here is me, and it's my relationship to my body, my, like, say, fantasies, sexual experiences, wants, needs, just everything that makes the sexual part of me tick. And then the other circle is my partner. And then we, like, you know, intersect and we have a sexual relationship together. And that's that lovely piece in the middle. But that piece in the middle doesn't have to define, you know, everything else. Like you can, I remember a client used this language with me once and I loved it. I was like, I'm using that. She was like, I learned that you can charge your erotic battery outside of sex with your partner. Like, you don't need to rely on partnered sex to meet all of these needs and to meet that, as you said, even that feeling of connection with yourself and feeling good in yourself. I only was working with a client recently, just to give you kind of an idea even of how I would view it and break it down. And when we were looking at her goals for the next few weeks, very small, very manageable, like it's very collaborative. They pick it. I don't prescribe, you know, you have to go and do this. I suggest, and they obviously pick. So I said 3 sections. First, what can you do for yourself and your general health? Nothing to do with sex. What can you do for yourself for the next few weeks? Do you need more sleep? Do you need to journal more meditation? Anything that will, like, be conducive to you being a bit more relaxed and a bit more happy, a bit more grateful, whatever words you want to use. Next section was, what can you do for your sexual relationship with yourself? Maybe you want to read an erotic book, and they're becoming really popular now amongst women, which is a whole other topic, a romantasy section, if you've heard of that.
I have heard of it, yeah.
Whole thing for a reason. Or maybe it's you want to try out audio erotica, make time for self-touch or masturbation. It doesn't have to be sexual, but sensual. And then the third kind of section of the goals was, okay, and then what can you do for your relationship with your partner? So in my plan, is it maybe spending some very intentional phone-free time together where you don't talk about the kids, or in my case, the dogs, like, you know, you just reconnect as a couple, or you do a little date. Dating doesn't have to be going out and spending money and dinners and cinema. It can be so many things. Like, a date can be whatever you want it to be. It can be at home. Or is it planning, like, maybe a check-in, a little communication exercise once a week? So those 3 sections all feed into each other. And that's what I mean when we think of sex, we think about the third section, your relationship with your partner, which is obviously so important, but you can't neglect the first 2 sections. Do you know?
Yeah.
So often I find they might come to me for help around something relating to sex, and we will work on that, but we almost always end up working on something actually kind of outside of the bedroom, around general health promoting behaviours or boundaries, like I mentioned earlier, is a big one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you find a difference in speaking with, and I'm going to speak for heterosexual relationships here, just to, for clarity for myself first, but when you're dealing with female partners,
yes,
in a heterosexual relationship,
yeah,
and male partners in a heterosexual relationship,
yeah,
does that conversation about charging that battery and self-care, does it differ significantly?
Significantly, I'm not sure, but it does differ at times. I'm trying to think, like, I think with even the relationship with the self, men can be very good for masturbating, basically. They'll be like, that's normal, I do that, I've always done that. Because it's seen culturally as like something, all men do that, you know? Whereas women would have usually had a lot more shame about it from a young age, and there would have been more of a cultural taboo around it. So with charging their erotic or sexual battery, generally I find they would like have that relationship with themselves, but maybe the non-sexual stuff then mightn't be as good with men. With like talking to friends about stuff, or knowing when to stop working, knowing when to just put the laptop away, like boundaries around more maybe mental health related things. I find women, again, this is just from my work, very anecdotal, I find women can be a little bit more illiterate about that side of things.
Yes.
But then would struggle to put aside time for like self-touch or something sexual.
Okay. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I'll add more in then as well.
Do.
This is just my learning from working in the medical sphere then.
Okay.
Is we found that men who struggled with sexual related issues, erectile dysfunction, low libido, anything like that, it tended to be a lot more medical than emotional.
Okay.
Just a tendency now. And we didn't explore a lot of the emotional, to be fair, so feel free to challenge me on this.
Yeah.
But it tended to be a lot more related with their hormone profile, burnout, poor physical health, drink, drugs, alcohol. So they're chemical and physical markers that would maybe drive libido or desire were lower.
Yeah.
And speaking to a lot of women in that environment, it tended to be a lot of what you described, as in they didn't have the emotional drive or capacity or space to want to engage in something like that.
Yeah.
And when we spoke to people, when I say we, me and the doctor, and again, just this is anecdotal stuff, a lot of the men didn't necessarily have an issue being attracted to their partner or wanting to engage or initiating sex. It was physical stuff. And a lot of the women had no desire or libido, and they felt there was something wrong with them because they just didn't want to, but they were stressed and tired and didn't give themselves a lot of time for the self, I suppose. Yeah. Does that ring true from your experience, or is it something different in your experience?
No, I think there's so many parts that my brain was like pinging off, like ding, ding, ding. The first thing I was thinking of, you know, when you were saying the more like, is the word chemical or biological markers and whatnot, use of drink and drugs and
low
different
testosterone,
things,
hormone profiles,
But like, wouldn't a lot of that then be related to psychology?
Yeah, absolutely.
As well, because why
100%.
are they using drink and why are they... It's all connected again. It's all holistic, isn't it? That's really interesting. I mean, I certainly work with so many women, and I work more with women, I will say that up top. It's just more women come to me. It's not by, it's just the way it happens. A lot of women come to me with what they would call no libido or low libido, and would present it as, this is a me problem, my partner wants me to fix it, in a roundabout way. That's what they're saying.
Okay.
But it's often not a me. It's there's so much more there. And when you say, that desire not being there, very, very common, very common. And it's trying to figure out, okay, was it there before? Where is it gone? What has changed? Was it ever there? And there can be so many reasons for that. And sometimes it is relational as well.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't want to have sex because a lot of women, I told you we touched on this off mic before, but a lot of women, and we know this from research, unfortunately, they're still shouldering a lot of the work at home, like childcare, household labour, as well as being employed. So the modern life of your average woman is so incredibly demanding. And if they are in that dynamic where they feel like they're doing more, sex becomes another thing they have to give and do for their partner.
Yes. Yeah,
and that's not sexy. Like that doesn't create a good environment for desire. So some men don't like to hear that. Like, sometimes you just need to do a bit more. That won't apply to every relationship, obviously. And I'm just going by what research, like, that does consistently show. So that was just something that popped into my head there.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of women are either, again, it's from kind of a point of like, no, like, I'm doing enough. This isn't something now that I also want to give. And also they're exhausted. They're genuinely like physically wrecked as well.
Do you know what? I think this is so important, right? This part of the conversation. I'm delighted you brought that up. And it's so interesting to me. We were at a wedding on Friday, just gone, 2 days ago. And this conversation, not in its current frame, but this conversation came up multiple times because my demographic are now in a position where they're living together, having children for the first time, young babies in the house. There's a lot more stress and work for everybody in the house. And I spoke with both women who, without saying what you said, basically said what you've just said.
Yeah.
And I also spoke with men.
Yeah.
And where I see a lot of friction is a lack of having this type of an open discussion, because men will be like, I almost was triggered by what you said there, but not quite, because I knew you were going to say it. I had prepped myself. But it sometimes can feel like, and I know it's not, but it can feel like in these conversations that there's this battle going on.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Where everything you've just said about women in the workplace is absolutely true. And there's so much more on the average woman's plate now than there used to be even 15 years ago. So it's quite quickly now, there's a massive expectation on women to be at a certain level professionally, socially. They also, I might add to the pot, don't have the support that they used to have from community and other women.
No. Yeah, it's a totally different game now.
Landscape.
Yeah.
Almost to the point where they're almost like what men are, as in constant competition with each other for careers, places in the workplace, social standing, status. It's a similar game now that women are being forced to play as that men play. But on the male side of things, men are now feeling threatened by exactly this, because now men, rightly or wrongly, used to be the providers, go to work and come home and be provided for at home, which is just the way it was. Not making a judgment on that. Now men have more of a role to play in the house, supporting their partner, supporting potentially children or dogs.
Yes.
And being more emotionally invested.
Yes.
Which is only right, I think. But that's a completely new challenge for men as well. So they're also shouldering a different type of burden. It's not the same. Both are experiencing different challenges. But where I see a lot of friction is around the conversation, where sometimes it can sound like that message that you shared there is, now men, you got to pull up your trousers and get to work. And a lot of these men, just from my experience speaking to them, are absolutely exhausted.
Oh, 100%.
And the only reason I say that is because when we worked in the clinic, these are the men we were seeing.
Yeah.
Completely burnt out, exhausted, and had no more to give, but needed to give more.
Yeah.
So that's a really difficult dynamic for any relationship.
Oh, it is, yeah.
And there's no right or wrong.
No.
It is the state of the modern world.
100%. And I think it's so unique to each couple.
Yeah.
And I would say, if I'm talking about, some men need to do more. If someone's getting triggered by that, well, that mightn't apply to you, Or
if you're getting triggered.
Or maybe it does. It depends.
It's something you need to look at.
Exactly. And it's like, I know relationships where it's kind of been the other way around. And I think it's like, I don't think there's any clear-cut answers, because I think this is quite a modern, we're living in times we've never lived in before, and we don't know what the blueprint is and exactly how to handle all of this. I think one thing we can do is have very explicit conversations about, what do you think a good, fair, healthy relationship looks like? Like, me and my partner have talked about this before, and now luckily they were quite aligned, but there were some things we had to balance out a bit. I remember there was a time when he felt he was doing more around the house, and I was shocked. I was like, what? And I was like, oh, maybe you are. Like, sometimes you can just be so in your head of the way you view things. And that can happen, right? So it's kind of that having a really explicit conversation again around what's fair to you. Because sometimes there's roles we assume the other person's just going to take, but the other person mightn't want that role. So I know it's kind of hard to describe maybe without a specific example, but I think just the communication around the house, the different jobs, and even having kids. That's a whole other conversation of before you have kids, before you get married even, you need to probably have these conversations around, well, what do you expect things to look like? What do you expect me to do and you to do? And is that a realistic conversation to have, do you think? Because I think, and I know I'm probably more working with the sex intimacy side of it. So I would be asking people, before you really commit to a relationship, however that looks, asking, what does a good sex life look to you? What does cheating mean to you? What's infidelity? Because again, the lines can be blurred. And some people say, sure, why do you have to discuss that? Everyone knows what cheating is. I'm like, no, they don't. Some people, one person in a relationship could think watching porn is being unfaithful, and the other person could think it's absolutely fine. So I think the more explicit we are and the less assumptions we make, we can set ourselves up a bit better for when the times are challenging and you're both wrecked and there's loads going on.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I don't have kids. I have dogs. They're not obviously half the work.
Dogs are kids that never grow up.
Of course, and they're wonderful, but like we don't have. So I am very conscious that when I am, I suppose, giving any guidance or suggestions to parents, it's something that you're going to have to take what applies and leave the rest, because some of it, especially when the kids are young, is just not going to be possible to work on maybe. But some of it might be. It depends how much support you have as well.
That's a great point, actually.
You
Yeah,
know?
that's a great point. There's a phrase I heard late last year, and I think it comes up in almost every podcast now, and every conversation I have almost. Hidden expectations lead to, I've completely forgotten the phrase now. Hidden expectations lead to, unspoken
Stress.
expectations lead to hidden resentment. That was the phrase.
Right.
Unspoken expectations lead to hidden resentment, i.e. if there's something that you feel you need or want and you haven't expressed it, there's a high likelihood you're going to resent the other person for not delivering upon that.
Yeah.
But how can you expect that? Because you haven't actually expressed it.
I know.
And I think that communication piece you mentioned there, in this fictional relationship we've spoken about there, if the needs aren't being expressed, I think that's probably the fundamental issue.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time when I think about this, when I was younger, I used to be very binary, very black and white when I think about certain issues. Like, this is the way it should be and this is the way it shouldn't be. And then I'd listen to a podcast, oh no, this is the way it should be.
Yeah.
the older I grow, which is unfortunately the thing with wisdom, is you only get it as you grow. I don't think I have any wisdom, but as you grow older, you start to learn lessons either personally or through the work that you do. I think the idea of being in a relationship where you have this perfect communication is great. But I don't think I've ever met anybody who is in a relationship like that, because there are challenges that you will not see.
Of course.
So I think being prepared for the unexpected, as cliched as that sound, is probably a good approach here. Understanding that there are going to be times where it is not ideal.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of the content online that people are consuming posits this ideal. Your relationship is good if your partner says this to you, or your wife does this, or this is a good relationship. So you have this expectation in your head of what a good relationship should be, but that is so far removed from your particular set of circumstances.
Yeah.
And even you don't know what your circumstances are going to be tomorrow, because in a lot of cases, either there's poor communication or there's unexpected circumstances, which is just life. So trying to prepare for this, or holding yourself to this perfect standard, I have found is a recipe for trouble.
Wow.
And when I have these conversations that I mentioned at the wedding, or when I used to have them in the clinic, or when I have them in the studio here, or I hear people talking about them, it generally, you can kind of see they're holding themselves to a certain standard, and then the guilt and the shame and everything comes in.
Yeah.
Whereas if that was maybe communicated a bit more openly, or using the frameworks you've suggested, it could probably deal with a lot of these issues in the moment when we're emotional and we're upset. And if we have pre-framed all this, well, look, we're going to maybe make some mistakes here, and there's a lot that's not going to go right, but the most important thing is we're communicating and trying.
Exactly.
Would that be fair enough?
Oh, completely.
Assessment?
But it is that communication. Like, even myself as someone who teaches this all the time, like, my communication skills have increased enormously in my relationship. Like, I'm with my partner 5.5 years, and like, oh my God, night and day, even from when I was starting, like, I sometimes didn't communicate myself properly at all. I wasn't specific. I expected him to read my mind at times. Maybe he did the same for me, but like, we're carrying so much into a relationship if we've had past relationships as well, which I had really chaotic relationships. So I expected chaos. And then when I had this really peaceful relationship, I was like, well, I'm going to create chaos because that's what I know. And I actually realized, Grace, that's what you're doing. You're starting fights because that's what you know. And you're creating problems because that's what feels safe to you, because that's all you've known in relationships mostly. So then I had to kind of settle down a bit and realize, God, I have a really good partner. I feel safe with him, which is really important. A lot of people I work with do not feel safe with their partners. And I don't mean physically safe. I mean emotionally safe. So I know I can go to my partner and be very, very vulnerable. And I can express things that even maybe I'm ashamed to admit, or I'm still processing. I don't have the perfect way to say what I'm going to say, but I trust him to receive that and to hold that and to not immediately react negatively or judge me. Like, he's human, he can have a reaction. But that feeling of safety is really important, to have those conversations that you mentioned, like this regular communication. And it has to go both ways, like that emotional safety.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
That is missing a lot of the time, because we're shutting each other down, or it's escalating into an argument every time we have, or one person starts crying, so we have to stop that, you know. And then we're not getting anywhere.
Is that because of what we're bringing individually? Is that because of maybe less than ideal interactions in the relationship? So not physical, but like, is it behavior?
Yeah.
Or is it things that we're bringing to the relationship that we haven't resolved?
Yeah, it can be both.
Okay.
So I would say, firstly, yes, it can be what we're bringing, because I really think underneath it all, we're all just children running around the place. We're all just children who want to be invited to the party and want to be loved and want to feel seen and special and all that. And that's natural. And we all want that. Men as well, just
100%.
want to be loved, want to be seen, and that's a whole other conversation where I think there's a lot of shame around wanting that. But yeah, we're all just little children running around, and our inner child gets, really upset when someone comes and tells us we did something wrong or they're not happy with us or whatever, and we start panicking. So that's what we can work on that. We can control. When I say control it, we can work on that in the sense of, I can go to therapy and work on my stuff and say, okay, Grace, my current partner is not my past partner. My inner child, yes, has a voice, but we don't want them in the driving seat. We're an adult now. We're safe. We can speak for ourselves and advocate for ourselves and all of that. But then also, yes, sometimes it is just in the relationship where, like, one partner, like, I don't want to get too much into it because it could get very dark, but there is a lot of abusive behaviours that I think people are slow to call abusive, but are, like, very manipulative. I've had people before who are in relationships where one partner will come and say, look, let's just say, I'm not really happy with our intimate life. I'd love if we could, I don't know, maybe spend some more time together. And do you think you could take off work a little bit early on this day? They're just expressing something. And that partner will not have dealt with any of their own stuff and just will react with defensiveness, maybe turn it back on the other person. I've seen it where sometimes the partner, if one partner really struggles with not crying, like they just cry a lot. Some people just do, and crying is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. Where the other partner will be like, I can't talk to you until you're calm. You need to go and compose yourself. You need to. Whereas I'm like, no, they're just crying. They can still speak. They're just having an emotional reaction because this matters to them. Does that make sense? So there's that's not safe.
Yeah.
And it happens with, again, people of all genders. There's no safety there of, can I be really vulnerable and messy and raw with you? And do I trust you to hold that with respect? You don't have to know the perfect thing to say. You don't have to fix it. But can you just sit with me in that?
Yeah.
There's a discomfort,
100%, yeah. And I think you spoke about the inner child there. I'm fascinated by this topic, by the way. And I would have spoken to a lot of people about maybe exploring that inner child or the shadow self and all this kind of stuff. And I know that most of us, myself included, have not done enough of that work to comfortably sit in a relationship and say, I am the neutral one here. Absolutely not. I don't even know if that exists.
No.
But the difficult thing to observe in any relationship is when you can see these behaviors and manipulative behaviors, aggressive behaviors, and you can see them both ways. And I'm generalizing here, but there tends to be a lot more of maybe the overtly or more aggressive or more domineering behavior from the male side of things. And then you can observe manipulative behavior with the female side of things, and maybe it is that some crying is genuine and some crying is designed to manipulate. Some comments are genuine from both sides. Same with anger. Some can be a genuine expression of frustration, and some can be manipulative and domineering. And when you talk about inner child, it's quite obvious that both of those, the behaviors are awful, but they're people trying to protect themselves within what should be a safe space in a relationship. And it becomes very combative then. And then the behavior can take over. And this is not just in relationship. I've seen this in so many different, in a health scenario or whatever. The behavior then starts to take over, and then it becomes habit. And you've got all of this different nuance built around something that started off as, I haven't dealt with my shit.
Yeah.
But now it's your problem.
Now it's your problem,
And now it's our problem. And now this whole, and it gets very, very messy very fast. So
it does, yeah.
Being able to pare that back and boil that back, is that, do you have to deal with a lot of that, by the way? Do you have a lot of people who come to you that you can identify that this is a major issue, and you've a lot of, like, they have a lot of self-work to do? Is that something you deal with?
Yeah, it is. but I can't phrase it as directly as that. But,
Yeah.
sometimes I would say, look, I think actually psychotherapy here could be really helpful
Okay.
in kind of rewinding a bit, looking back into your childhood, because this is where so much of this starts, right?
Yeah.
And doing some work around where you adopted these core beliefs about yourself. Because a lot of the way we act in relationships and the partners we're attracted to, a lot of it is just reflective of how we feel about ourselves. If you feel really good about yourself, if you have high self-worth, if you believe in, your worthiness as a person, you're respectful of yourself, you're not going to end up with someone who treats you badly. Like, I can see that in my relationships. I was with people who treated me like really badly. And yeah, I didn't value myself. I didn't respect myself. Now, I'm not blaming myself, because we have to be really careful. They were still abusive, and it was, the blame does still lie with them. But, I suppose when I even think of these relationship dynamics, I see it in twofold. There are nearly two different conversations. One is, how do we stop perpetrators acting like this to begin with, which is a huge conversation. And that we could get into poverty cycles, we could get into cultural gender norms. There's so much there. There's a lot to do. So I kind of like to focus just in my work on how can I prevent people getting with these perpetrators, or how to escape them maybe quicker, or that kind of.
Yes, yeah.
Both are important pieces of work. Even when I think of young people, and I have a program in schools and whatnot, I see, and I suppose particularly because I'm a woman, I'm going to see particularly young girls and think I just, as much education we can give them about red flags and just when to just know something's a bit off and trusting your gut. Sorry, I'm getting off topic.
No, it's very relevant. Very relevant.
And then, I think that's, I suppose, because I get very hopeless and helpless and sad when I look at statistics and think of all the abuse that is happening in relationships, and you can get very bogged down in, oh, Jesus Christ, the world is ending. We're all fucked. So I kind of like to just say no, but there's still so much we can do. But yeah, as you said, doing that work on yourself is part of all that. But some people don't want to do that. Some people just do not want to. Some people feel unable to, and that's fine. And maybe it's not their time yet, and they will get to the point where they can. But some people, I don't want to say some people are just bad, because that's not really what I'm trying to say. But some people just won't do it. They will just move on to the next relationship and repeat the patterns and just keep doing that. And they're the people that scare me the most, I think.
In my experience, outside of this specific realm with health, I used to call it it was a physical heart attack. Most people wouldn't make a significant change to their health until they had a heart attack.
Yes.
There's no motivating factor for them to change. There's no reason for them to change anything that's painful enough to change the behaviors. We mentioned drugs and alcohol earlier on.
Yeah.
Drugs and alcohol are a coping mechanism for most people.
Yes.
They're moving away from pain, and they're reaching for something that can help with that. So the addiction cycle is very clear around that. And then you develop this behavior and patterns. With a lot of people who are abusive or aggressive, it's a similar pattern, but the behavior is completely unacceptable. So the conversation for me always comes back to, you've highlighted a problem here. The statistics are really, really clear on this. Is this around physical or emotional or both?
Both.
Okay.
Specifically physical. I mean, there's no denying women suffer more physically.
100%.
There's no denying, and that's not. And again, any man who's getting triggered by that might have to reflect on that, because when I say that, I'm like, oh yeah, but so many men don't fit in that bracket at all. But there's no denying that men will use violence a lot more in relationships, and women not so much. I mean, it does happen. Jesus, it does happen. But
well, most violence committed against anybody is committed by men.
Men, exactly.
And I'm comfortable to say that as a man.
Yeah, that's just a fact.
It's just a fact, yeah. And I'm also very comfortable to say it's not all or most men, but it is always a man who, in most cases, commits the violent act. And in most cases, it is a man who has an extremely complex past, but it doesn't excuse the behavior. I had Dr. Rena O'Leary on the podcast. She's a forensic psychologist who works, I mention her so often because she's an amazing person. She works specifically with male offenders of violent and sexual crimes.
Okay.
So she works with them after the fact.
Right, yeah.
Trying to understand what led to this crime, and she provides feedback and report to the courts. But she has to sit down, like we're sitting down right now, with male perpetrators of violence almost exclusively against females, in or out of relationship. There's no real definition around that. But she worked really hard to try and help me understand, because I was used to be very binary, wrong, right.
Yeah.
This is good, this is bad. But she helped me understand, I only know that because of what my parents taught me. And my dad taught me a certain way to deal with people, and a certain way not to deal with people, and so did my mom. That's the only reason I know that. And she explained to me that a lot of these men, while their behavior is 100% inexcusable, it's not, there's no justification for it, but there's a reason for it. And, and until we can understand the reason, we're not going to eliminate the statistics. We're not going to bring them down. And I feel like the conversation is very triggering for a lot of men, because they get really frustrated and angry because I'm not doing that. And that's absolutely correct. But unless we can all understand why the men who do it are doing it, we're not going to eliminate the problem.
100%.
And until we can eliminate the problem, there are going to be women who aren't safe. And there are going to be men who aren't safe. And this is just the fact that we deal with right now. Because I think it descends too much into politics, and people arguing with each other about it's your fault and it's your fault. Raina can help me see there's a very simple issue here. You mentioned some of the factors. They're socio-economic factors, or they're maybe abuse factors, or they're trauma factors. And it leads to these behaviours. But the behaviours aren't acceptable.
Yeah, of course they're not. No.
I think that conversation is really important. And when you're working with children and schools, and specifically younger girls, is that something you have to explore? Is that language you have to use? Or is it more for them about recognizing certain situations, or you mentioned red flags, or is it about understanding a little bit about themselves? And what does that look like when you're talking to a younger person?
To a younger person, and like we're external, so we go into schools, so we have a limited time with them, right? So we only have like maybe a 4-hour workshop. So really it is more on highlighting the red flags and how to notice them, and how to look out for each other as well. Not just girls, like boys, like we deliver to boys' schools, girls' schools, mixed everything, right? So that would be delivered to all genders, basically, of red flag behaviours. And I like, sometimes we would mention, and sometimes you're the person displaying the red flag behaviour. And that doesn't mean you're, a terrible, awful person, but it still doesn't make the behaviour okay. And you need to look at why am I acting this way? Like, that's a huge question, right? And obviously that's really more something you have to do one-on-one, like that wonderful lady you mentioned there. So at that age, I think it's more the protective piece that we have time for. But like, in an ideal world, I mean, the school system would look completely different. We'd be learning about our emotions, how to hold emotions in our bodies, how to deal with rejection, how to we'd really be learning this stuff quite in depth, which we don't, I don't think, unless they've completely changed things. Which I think would value our society so much more than, like, look, all the academic subjects are important. But like, I always say, like, we don't have a maths problem in Ireland. We don't have a chemistry problem. We're like, oh, Jesus, not enough people speak French. But like, we have a violence problem. We have a sexual violence problem. Like, in Northern Ireland, I believe, is the second most dangerous place to be a woman in Europe. That's what the stats say. The rate of women being murdered in Northern Ireland. Either in Europe or the EU, I'm not sure. Oh no, sure, they're not in the EU anymore, Northern Ireland. So that's what I read recently. And I've seen that a few times now. So like look at the societal issues we have. So here I am saying we should redo the whole school system, basically, the whole curriculum. No, but in all seriousness, like, that is the stuff that makes for a much healthier, better functioning society. Yes, the academic stuff is important, but I don't see why we can't really put more effort into modern problems and all, even young men being exposed to so much, like, what do they call alpha male, blah, 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 influencers. Like, they're targeting them on purpose. They know what they're doing. And young boys, like, they're falling into these traps online. I'm like, oh, we need to address this really head on and quickly. So, yeah. So sorry, to answer your question. I suppose at that age, for me, it is more about identifying the red flags. But in an ideal world, we'd be broadening that out to also your own behaviours. And, one thing I will mention is that what's the word for it? It's kind of like... It's a diagram. It's a pyramid. I don't know.
Maslow's hierarchy.
Is it of need? It's not the one of needs. It's one where basically. So I'll have to look it up after and find the exact term. It's basically this pyramid. It is a hierarchy essentially, right? And at the top, there's awful things like rape and murder and the worst things you could be doing as a human. But these things don't just happen out of thin air. And all the layers leading up to the top are behaviors that enable it. So, when you say about men getting annoyed of like, well, I'd never hit a woman, I wouldn't do that. And when I put this content online, like the men get really angry in my comments. It's now only a handful, but look, it happens. I'm like, okay, you might not be hitting someone, you might not be committing sexual violence, but if you were like making jokes about violence, if you are not taking it seriously, if you are, resending stuff in WhatsApp groups that shouldn't be resent, if you're catcalling, there's so many behaviors you could be doing or enabling that contribute to these high rates of violence and sexual assault. So I don't like, among anyone of any gender, this washing hands of, well, I'd never do that, it's not my problem. We all contribute to stuff in different ways. I've contributed to that before. When I was younger, and I say I really didn't know any different. I was, I would say, for example, be a bit victim blamey, like, oh yeah, well, why did she go back to his house, or why was she wearing that? Because that's what you hear. I was contributing then to that culture. But then it's your responsibility as an adult to take accountability for that and say, oh, I don't want to be part of the problem. As much as I can, I don't want to be part of the problem.
Yeah.
So that I just thought of that when we were kind of talking there about, I think I understand the defensiveness, but I think sometimes, unfortunately, it can be a little bit misplaced. Because when women are talking about violence and we're not actually saying all men. I've never seen anyone in real life, in my life, ever say that or suggest that. It's just like, okay, it's not all men, but it's the culture we live in.
I like how you say it in real life there, because we don't really interface with a lot of people in real life anymore. So like I can speak to the male piece that you mentioned, the alpha male influences and stuff like that, because I talk about this a lot and I live in this world a lot.
Yeah.
And a lot of these people, and I won't name names, but a lot of these people are really successful and influential because there's a vacuum there.
Yes.
There is no real clear guideline for young boys and men as to like, what is a good man? Who should I be? How do I process my emotions? I know that's a massive one for men specifically, is emotional regulation.
Yes.
Understanding what these feelings are.
Yeah.
And what is a healthy outlet or a way to express them or a way to communicate that this is what I'm feeling. We don't have that.
I know.
In a lot of cases. So there is a vacuum there when you see Chad on Instagram and he's telling you this is what it means to be a man. Similarly in the female space, where this is what it is to be a woman, and you've all these different spheres of, you've got this housewife thing taken off. Trad wife. I've got the influencer, the fitness thing. These are all different versions of what you should be to be a successful, well-balanced, happy person.
Yeah.
They don't say that, but that's what they're demonstrating
by
being held in certain positions of esteem online. Same for men. So you have these generations of young boys and girls growing up with all of these mixed messages. And then we have a conversation like this and people on both sides get triggered. But they're only getting triggered based off what they've consumed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I firmly believe, I've always believed this about most things, I firmly believe in this situation and most situations, if everybody sat down and had a balanced conversation with each other, we'd all realise, we're all just trying to do our best, and I'm making these mistakes, and okay, I can do better here, and there'd be a lot less judgment. There's not a lot of space to do that now, because as soon as you say this online, you're attacked.
Oh my God, Ethan,
As soon as I say anything that sounds in any way biased towards men, I get eaten. So it's difficult to have these safe conversations.
Yeah, it is.
Which is why I appreciate someone like you being so forthright. And very clearly educational and empowering in your approach. It's not about being right or wrong. It's about giving people skills to manage.
Absolutely.
That doesn't exist a lot in any world, female or male.
Yeah.
But there's vacuums there for narratives and messages to fill. And that's what I see. I see a lot of people, men, boys, older and younger than me. And sometimes I'm listening going, where's this even coming? This anger or this frustration or this... and then I notice it myself. I'm like, where is that coming from?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
It's there and it comes up regularly. And every time you open your phone or hear a message or listen to a podcast, there's probably something in there that's going to press a little bit on something that makes you uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And if you don't know how to process that discomfort, you're going to have a reaction. And in a lot of cases, that reaction leads to a behavior that is probably a less than helpful behavior.
I think there's so much anger. And like, I have some of it myself, and as you say, I notice it coming up myself, where I'm like, oh my God, where's that coming from? On, let's say, both sides, and I'm being very like sided here. And it's really hard because, like, if I talk about women and like the research around, violence against women, sexual assault against women. And like, I'm really passionate about that and I really want to change that. You get certain men, just a subgroup of men, who take this as an attack on men. And in that way, these kind of spaces for discussing women's lives and how to make women's lives better are kind of being invaded by really angry men who I don't think are actually angry. I think they are angry at women, but I think for the wrong reasons. I think it's completely misguided, like you said. And I think it's for mostly what maybe they are consuming online. And it's like, oh, who do I blame? I just blame women, And that's what, that incel culture of that women, that we're all just basically denying you sex, that like we're using sex as a tool and we're running the world in this way. And I was like, God, if we're running the world, I haven't noticed. Like, anyway.
And just by the way, it's just in my general day-to-day, that's, like you mentioned, that's not a conversation I have with anybody I would consider
of course,
a well-balanced human being.
100, but that's the thing.
It's not a conversation.
It's not, no. And something I noticed recently, I'd be interested to know what you think of this, right? So I had someone come to me and they were like, okay, when women are saying, like, men are trash. So that phrase, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a throwaway thing. I'm like, oh men, and we'll say whatever. And they're like, what if we started saying women are trash? And I'm like, well, a lot of men do say women are trash. They just mightn't say it in that language, but they show it. And by the way, they talk about women, first of all, right? So maybe there's a language difference there. I'm like, okay, I'm not defending it. I actually don't like the whole men are trash and all men are, I don't. And again, most people I know aren't really saying that in any meaningful way. I think, and the point I arrived at with this person who was a man was that from a woman's point of view, when a woman hates men, just for example, say they hate men, they go online, they rant about it, men are trash, and they might say really horrible things, right? Sometimes they might do more than that, but generally that's how they express it, this anger, this rage. When men hate women, it results in much more serious things happening. I'm being very generalized here. I'm not saying women. I mean, there are women who do terrible things. But again, like you can't deny the rates and the research and everything, right? So I think women growing up with this kind of knowledge that like we do have to worry about our safety very significantly, that men are trash, it's coming from a place of hurt. It's coming from a place of trauma. It's not, again, actually, I hate men. It's I hate feeling like I can't walk home at night without being scared. It's, I hate feeling like I have to be conscious of what I wear every day because I don't want to attract the wrong. There's so many things we think about. And I'm not saying men don't have their own worries, but I think they find it very hard to empathize with that. It comes out as anger, but I think underneath that anger, when we express it, it's actually hurt and it's trauma and it's like sadness and wanting things to be different. But it does sometimes come out as men are trash, which I don't agree with. But I think in the scheme of things, having a vent online is less harmful than actually like, like killing women. Like this is happening. This is happening every day, like horrendous things happening. Incel culture is growing and we won't, we don't need to go the whole way down that path. But anyway, I was just interested, what do you think of that? Like, I suppose what I'm saying, that distinguishment between women who hate men and men who hate women, I think one group is just more dangerous than the other person.
Undeniable.
Yeah.
Undeniable. So what I'm going to give you right now is purely my opinion.
Yeah,
this
of course.
Is just purely my opinion. I have a lot of conversations around these topics, not necessarily online, but with a lot of different people from a lot of different backgrounds. I try and be really open.
Yeah.
But what you're going to get is my biased opinion. It's just me.
Yeah.
I don't actually believe, to start off, that men hate women or women hate men.
Okay.
I believe the men who say they hate women don't hate women.
It's not actually about women.
Sorry, it's not about women. It's about themselves.
Yeah.
Every single man I've ever spoken to that has said something derogatory about a woman, I immediately know it's him.
Oh yeah, I agree. Yeah,
immediately. And I can't speak for women, but a lot of the women I have spoken to who have said I hate men or men are trash, whatever, they've usually had a really bad experience.
Yeah.
So of course I understand. Of course I understand. It's you don't necessarily hate men, but you hate the experience you've had with men, and therefore most men become a a symbol of threat.
Mhm.
That's my first piece, right? So
Yeah.
I don't actually believe it's a hate thing. I believe it's much deeper than that. And I'm expressing this hate at you. You've hurt me, so I hate you. No,
Yeah, of
I hate how you've
course.
made me feel.
Yes,
I don't think I hate you. I hate how you've made me feel.
Yeah.
So
Or even I hate the way
I
the
hate
system, I hate the
I hate
culture.
everything.
Yeah, it's bigger.
I think language limits us there. So when I say I hate
Yeah.
men, I think it's a limitation of language. So I
Okay.
don't truly believe. But most men I've spoken to who are derogatory around women, I'm like, he either is just an asshole or
Yeah.
he's dealing with his own stuff.
Yeah.
And that's not me being an ally to women right here.
No, yeah.
I genuinely believe that.
Okay.
The second part, men are undeniably more dangerous.
Yeah.
This is a weird conversation we're having nowadays. Men are, in my opinion, less emotionally intelligent. I'll speak for myself as a man, less emotionally intelligent. I won't generalize. In my experience, I've seen speed away, but have more physical tools.
Yeah.
They are a more dangerous physical threat to more vulnerable people, women and children, or people who are smaller or less strong than them. In my experience and from speaking to other men, those of us who cannot properly express our emotions, it tends to come out in more aggressive behaviors.
Yeah.
And that is a fear-based response. I spoke to a really good friend about this on the podcast before. It's a complete fear-based response. So when I spoke to Reconnect, I asked her if the men she is dealing with are overly, quote unquote, masculine men. And she's absolutely not. It's the opposite. They are not healthy, balanced people. They are afraid.
Yeah.
It's a cliche to say they've all been abused. They haven't all been abused.
No.
But they've all experienced something.
Yes.
No
Could
positive.
be anything, couldn't it?
anything.
It could be even something that seems insignificant, but
A
a
loud
cocktail of
noise
things
scared them once and
built,
they
yeah.
built it and they became an anxious person, and this anxiety built bad behaviors and they were socially awkward, and then they realized they weren't able to interact with a woman because they were socially awkward, and then they resented the woman because of so it's this big long string of nuance that leads to a person, usually a man, committing a crime against a woman.
Yeah.
It's not a masculine man. And where I think the conversation really broke down in society on the internet.
Yes.
Let me clarify.
Because
not in real life.
It's a whole different show. Yeah.
Every conversation I've had with a woman about this is really balanced and really like, oh, you feel like this, because we're talking to each other and there's body language and I can see how hurt this person is and they can see how hurt I'm like, oh wow, okay. Not the same on the internet.
No. Yeah.
I scream and I shout and I don't have to deal with the consequences, and all of a sudden you build a movement. But the outcome of all of this is masculinity becomes toxic, and it's actually the opposite. It's men who are not expressing masculine qualities, which is an ability to regulate my emotions, a recognition of I am the physically more capable, not capable, that's the wrong word, but I am stronger or I could cause more damage in this relationship.
Yeah.
Therefore, I need to manage that. I need to understand that. And I need to be very, very careful how I express that.
Yeah.
I notice that sometimes if I drive a motorbike and the jacket has big pads, and if I'm in a shop, I'm just so aware that I'm going to bump into someone and knock them over here.
Yeah.
And then I was like, that's kind of unfortunately how I need to think now, because my presence could make somebody uncomfortable.
I know.
And women have said to me they feel uncomfortable if I walked up behind them on a dark street. So I'm like, okay, I could disagree with that. Or I can just take that at face value and say, if I walk up behind a woman on a dark street, she's going to feel uncomfortable, and just not do it.
Yeah.
Like, it's no real
not
skin off
you.
my teeth. It's not, she's not saying I'm a bad person.
No.
She's saying that's how she feels. So again, I'm trying to walk the middle line here. I'm not pro or anti anybody.
Yeah.
And I am a man, so I have a bias.
Of course.
But that's my personal experience. Anytime I have a conversation with a person, that's what comes up. It's not actual real hate, it's real hurt.
Yeah.
That's the first part. We all love each other for the most part. Like, we really do well. We balance each other well. There's beautiful dynamics when people are getting along. Men and men, women and women, men and women, whatever it might be. But this really, really vocal minority online is where we get a lot of our information. And I think that confuses us a bit as men with a very poor ability to emotionally regulate. And then we hear this message of, this is what it is to be a man.
Yeah.
It's demand respect, and it's go and win at all costs, and it's like go and become an absolute killer and an animal. And there's no other side of the message going, that's all okay, that's fine. Once you're very aware of how you show up in the world and how you're interacting with other people, whether it's women, children, men, whoever it is.
Yeah.
That's the conversation I feel is not being had for men. And I feel if a lot of women knew that conversation was being had, they'd be a lot less likely to go, oh, they're doing nothing about this and no one's taking responsibility, because a lot of men want it and have no idea how.
Exactly.
They have no idea how.
And do you know when you said there at the beginning, you're like, oh, you could say men are, what did you say, less emotionally intelligent? Really generalizing, obviously.
I am less
you
emotionally
are,
intelligent.
right? And a lot of men, like I to be honest, I would tend to agree, and I would say, but yeah, obviously, because you're not taught it in the way girls are. It's the way we bring up young boys and girls is so different. And, if you said to me, oh, men are generally better with cars, I'm like, yeah. And like some people jump down your neck about that. I'm like, no, I think that's fair. I think they generally are, because when you have a young boy, the young boy is much more likely to be shown the car parts by their dad, let's say, or whatever. Whereas the dad, I mean, again, hopefully loads of dads do, but like they would probably show their son before their daughter. I don't know, like if they were doing something in the car, or like in the kitchen, it might be more that, the mother might show the daughter these tiny, tiny, tiny things. So,
Can I don't want to interrupt you in your flow.
No, yeah.
Can I contribute there as well?
Yeah.
I have 3 children.
Yeah.
Girl 7 and 2 boys, 4 and 1.
Yeah.
And Zoe was first, and the house was filled with girl toys.
Yeah.
Myself and Jill's an OT.
Yeah.
She's very, very aware of this kind of thing.
Yes.
Almost, now I can't say zero because how we live is influence, but almost no influence in terms of what we show them or give them.
Yeah.
To me, they are completely neutral, and they are so different. So I don't know where you land on the whole natural differences piece. Those 2 boys are just boys, out and out.
Yeah.
And he grew up with an older sister, so he was surrounded by Barbies and everything. And she is just, now she plays sports, and we bring them both down, and she decides to do this and he decides to do this. If I'm doing a job outside, Zoe, do you want to come and push the lawnmower? Jason, and he is all over it, and she has no interest.
Yeah.
So there's another element there as well. Now I know they're picking up cues and signals off me and Jill.
Yeah.
I fully accept that. But I do think there's another layer past just how we influence them. I agree with you, by the way, in terms of we have to educate them the same.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to throw that nuance in there as well.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. And like, you might have other boys, and I see it online, and oh my God, the parents get such hate. Boys that they want to do their makeup like their mommy. Like they want to do because they're just looking at someone they love and they think, ooh, colours,
Yeah.
And
the boys will do that.
Yeah.
But about 5% of the time.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Fair enough. I suppose it depends on the child as well and the context and everything.
Yeah.
But I suppose my point on that was like with the emotional literacy, we're probably, I think again, I'm not saying we're all doing it. I'm not saying nowadays things haven't changed, but I think girls would have been brought up to be, think about people's feelings a bit more, just more conscious of, how would I put it? Some of it is kind of a safety thing, where as a girl, you kind of learn to keep things sweet, because if things are sweet, things are safe.
Yeah.
And this is really now deep level stuff, stuff we pick up from a very young age, and we smile, and, because you're told, you smile now, you're pretty when you smile, and, be nice and whatever. I'm not saying boys aren't told the same, but like a lot of the time they wouldn't have been. So girls, I think, are taught to scan their environments more, to pick up on the moods, to pick up on the body language. Even like I mentioned off camera, I'm autistic. This wasn't diagnosed till last year, because I believe I learned stuff from such a young age because I'm a girl, because on some deep level, at some age, I learned that you have to be aware of the people around you and their intentions, their emotions, to keep yourself safe. And I couldn't tell you because I can't remember that far back. But like this must have sunk in quite young, because I was able to, do fine in that area of reading people and whatever. So what was I saying about that? So yeah, with emotional literacy, I'm like, when I say men tend to be a bit less emotionally literate, that's not a criticism. That's just because like you haven't maybe picked up that stuff that girls have maybe had to pick up. And that's not a personal flaw. That's just, you haven't been given the same opportunities to learn about this maybe. But now you're an adult, so you can learn if you want to do better, if you want to feel like you are actually more in tune and you understand emotions better,
I like that. I think a lot of these conversations can become very, I don't know what the word is, but not that they are, I'm going to say a word now. It's not the word I'm intending at all. They're not useless to people, because a lot of people, it's almost like chewing gum for the brain or mental masturbation to hear these conversations and then do nothing. But I've listened to the conversation, so I'm more educated and I'm enlightened now.
Yeah.
It's more about the doing and the integration than it is about the talking about the things. But I think understanding, making comments like emotional intelligence, for me, that serves me because it allows me to see where I can potentially show up a little bit better for the people. And I don't just mean for Jill, I mean for my children and my friends and my business and my clients and everybody. But if I can identify an area I might not have as much experience in or expertise in, it gives me the opportunity to work on that. But you said, I love how you said that, if that's what you want.
Yeah.
So identifying, do I want a better relationship? Do I want a bigger business? Do I want to win the World Cup? Like what is it that I want? And where are the areas I could potentially work on that will allow that? And in the context of what we're discussing here, sex, intimacy, relationships, do I want a deeper sense of connection?
Yeah.
Do I want my partner to feel safe? And even if it's, and it's a weird way to think about it, but it benefits everybody.
It does.
If I feel healthy and safe in a relationship and you feel healthy, it benefits everybody. You feel safe, obviously, and you're more likely to be vulnerable. I feel a deeper sense of connection. I feel like I'm serving my relationship in this way and you're serving your relationship in this way. And that's, in my experience anyway, only a good thing. It's only a good thing. And I know probably everybody's familiar with that feeling of guilt and shame and frustration when you realize that maybe you're not the person that you A, thought you were, or B, would like to be.
Yeah.
That's not a nice feeling for anybody. So this piece about emotional intelligence in men, for example, gives us an opportunity, because I think it's a fact. I don't even, I was being a bit light with it earlier on. I do think it's most of us. But it gives us an opportunity to just, not to say, oh, well, I need to do all these certain things. But if I want to show up a certain way, here's all these things that I could potentially explore.
Yeah.
That's how I would view it anyway.
Absolutely.
Would you like more water there?
Yeah, maybe a little bit more.
I'm gonna pour some for me.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Lovely.
So I went pretty deep off track there.
That's all right.
I wasn't expecting to go down there. But while we're on the topic, let's dig into shame a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Why is shame such a huge part of these conversations?
I think because shame in it, the nature of shame is that, from my understanding of it, it is something that happens kind of in the darkness and the silence. It happens within us. When you start sharing stuff, something you're ashamed about, I think it immediately becomes a bit less shameful, especially if it's held in the right space. When you actually even use the word shame, this is what I've had to learn to do the last few years, is actually say, oh, I'm feeling shame about that. Like, I'm actually feeling ashamed about how I acted or what I said. And when I use the word, the power gets sucked out of it a little bit, you know? Whereas if we don't do that, which a lot of us obviously don't, and me included, it builds inside us. So you're kind of, it's this thing that no matter who I'm talking to, but particularly in my line of work, I'm always aware that there's probably some level of shame there inside them, because it's part of being human. It's part of being Irish and post-Catholic Ireland. I think, and on that, in that note, I'm not anti-religious, each their own, but I think culturally, religion and the impact in Ireland, I mean, shame is actually part of being Catholic. It's built in.
Well, didn't you say earlier on that you should be ashamed if you feel pleasure?
Yeah. You're born with original sin, you're born with sin, like, and it has to be washed off you.
Yeah.
Like, and I know we kind of say, yeah, but it's not really that. No, that's what it is. That's what you're told, and that's what you're taught, and that's what you read, and that's from a really young age. And Jesus died because of your sins. You know, it's fine if you ascribe to that. That's absolutely grand. We all need something. We all need whatever it is that helps us make sense of the world and life. But as children, like, we absorb a lot of that messaging. And then even outside of religion, I think just shame, it just sneaks its way in the absence, I think, of open, honest conversations, you know?
Yes.
So even if we take your private, and I'm using inverted commas, body parts, your genitals, if we teach, instead of teaching a girl that it's called a vulva or a vagina and the clitoris and the different bits, if we say it's your fairy or your whatever, immediately that is saying, oh, we can't use the proper word. So even a little sprinkling of shame gets sprinkled there, of we can't even use the word that it is, just, you know. So tiny, I think shame is built up in tiny, tiny, tiny moments that build up over time. And in my work, I mean, people kind of could come to me feeling, I think I've worked through a lot of it. You know, I'm very sex positive now. You'd be surprised. There can be still some core beliefs there that are clinging on.
How does that, and you don't have to be obviously specific with clients, but how does that show up for people today? How does that shame piece show up when people interact with each other in relationship, or when they think about themselves or their bodies? What is it that they're saying, and what are you seeing?
Lots of different examples, really. Say if I, again, think maybe particularly around women, it's sometimes feeling guilt around, again, masturbation, having their own sexual relationship with themselves, because they feel that this should be something they share with a partner, right? So it's
Okay.
not, they shouldn't be using their sexual energy on themselves. They should be saving that for their partner, right? Especially if the partner feels they're not having enough sex. So it's like the sexual energy is a finite thing. There's not enough of it there, and I'm using it for myself, and that's really bad. It's not really, but that's probably a different conversation. So that shows up in just kind of guilt, I suppose, feelings of guilt, inability to say no, or a lot of difficulty with saying no or expressing ourselves honestly. Because again, we might feel some shame around what we actually think about things or what we actually need or want. It can show up in, again, just really difficult having those open conversations if we're going straight to arguing. Like if we're going straight to defensiveness, there's probably shame there. Or even if we're going straight to crying in a way that genuinely you're really upset and you're crying, there's probably some shame there. It shows up in loads of different ways, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how, as individuals, can we start to identify that, not even identify what it is, but that there is shame there? Because I know it can be, I know not necessarily just with shame, but a lot of these emotions, we get really good at when the emotion arises, we immediately have a protocol. We flick this switch, turn this knob, do this thing. And then it's all these different coping mechanisms that we have that we don't even have to feel the feeling. And shame is potentially one of those feelings. How can we start to get in touch with, first, even just seeing if there is something there? Because I spoke earlier on about this idea of the shadow work and the shadow self and all this kind of thing as well. It does fascinate me, and it really opened my eyes. It gave me a different frame. I always knew that there was feelings, and I think we generally know on some level that it's there. But the shadow work and the shadow self and having that explained to me kind of just gave me a framework to, okay, this is how I can approach this. It's not something bad. It's something that's there that I can explore, that could potentially help me understand myself.
Yeah.
Is that kind of the approach that you would take when people demonstrate or express shame?
Yeah, like part of it would be asking, how does it show up in your body? Like, how does it actually feel when, we mightn't even start off with the word shame. And there is a difference between shame and feeling guilt, because shame is a deeper, like there's something wrong with me as a person, whereas guilt is more, I feel guilty, I did this thing.
Yes.
Right. But like even starting with, when you feel guilty or bad about something, that's language we use sometimes. How does it feel in your body? Because it can feel really uncomfortable. And that would be one thing I would ask. Now, sometimes people would really struggle with that, of how different emotions feel in their body, which is something you can work on, which is great to kind of start to learn that a bit. But yeah, I would be kind of asking, I think my job a lot of the time is to challenge, someone's, those negative core beliefs. If I notice them in a session, if I notice a bit of, they'll preempt it with saying something like, this probably sounds really bad, but... And I'm like, oh, what's going to happen? What are they going to say? And it'll be the most like inane, innocent thing. It'll be like, I actually prefer using my toy than having sex at the moment. I'm like, that's okay. Why? And if we just open up the conversation of why? Keep asking why. Not literally, but like you are kind of asking why until you get to the heart of the matter. And, even with the pleasure stuff, because a lot of my work is around pleasure and a lot of my work is with women, as I said, a lot of women don't know what they like, or maybe they have an idea but they don't know how to ask for it, or they don't know how to advocate for it. And one question I will ask is, well, do you think you deserve pleasure? And like that can be a really heavy question. I've asked people that before and they've cried just for me asking the question, and then I feel bad. But I'm like, okay, that's good though. We're touching on something here. This isn't actually about sex or masturbation or any of this. This is about like, what am I worth as a person? Do I deserve good things and nice things? So that's why, coming full circle to what we were saying earlier, of you might come to me with an issue around sex and we will talk about that loads, but often it's coming from a place that maybe has nothing to do with sex. It's coming from a much deeper place, just as your self-worth as a human, as a person.
I've heard you mention wants and needs before as well, and how that interfaces with shame. Why is it that we struggle so much to communicate? Is there a difference between a want and a need?
Yeah, in terms of sex, is it, and kind of that side of the
relationship?
I think
this probably mostly comes up in maybe intimate situations. Does it in relationship?
Yeah.
Well, maybe not, but let's keep it to that realm for now. For sex, wants and needs, and being able to express that and that link with shame.
Yeah. So, Okay, so say like if we take needs first, obviously it's in the name, it's something you need. I think we overuse it sometimes. We're like, I need more sex, I need more this. And like that again, that it mightn't be that you need more sex, you might need more connection. So needs might be something around, like I said earlier, I need to feel safe with my partner to have good sex. I need to feel emotionally safe with them. That's a fair need, that's valid. Needs aren't usually easily met. Like there's something that's, I feel, a bit deeper that might need to be built and worked on. Wants is kind of like, the way I think of it sometimes is, in an ideal world, this is what I would like as part of my sex life. I'd like to have sex 5 times a week and try new things every week. In reality, I mean, Jesus, it's great if you're doing that, but most of us don't have lives that accommodate that. So you kind of have to look at what you maybe thought you needed, but maybe it's more of a want. And then when you have a partner, it's just, where can we meet in the middle? Where your needs are being met, but not confusing what you would want from an ideal sex life to what you absolutely need.
Okay.
Now, I'm not encouraging people to settle for something that they're really not happy with, but it's just reality. You have to meet somewhere, I think, in the middle when it comes to most things. But in my realm, sex, intimacy. And I suppose where shame can come into that is maybe people feeling, I can't meet my partner's needs. My partner is really, I hear this, my partner's really sexual, they're really open, like they need a lot more sex. And again, I'll challenge that a little bit. Do they need a lot more sex? Or is it that they're feeling disconnected from you and in other areas of the relationship, and this is how it's showing up? I don't have the answers because it depends on the person.
Yeah.
But it's exploring that of, what do they need versus what do they want? And what is a fair request of our partners? So yeah, and then I suppose for women, shame can show up around very much being the partner with maybe the higher libido who wants to be more sexual. Because as a woman, the way you're socialized around sex is quite different. I feel, maybe I'm wrong, like I feel men wanting more sex is seen as the norm. But it's not necessarily.
Yeah.
And when it is, I think there's a lot of reasons for that. I don't think it's as simple as men are just more sexual. I don't believe that at all.
No.
At all.
No, I think maybe this is what I was trying to communicate earlier on as well. And I was talking in circles around it, this idea of when we dealt with other men, it tended to be like a physical barrier to them, but it wasn't a desire thing necessarily.
Yes, yeah,
so
yeah.
do they have like a higher sex drive or libido?
Yeah.
I don't know all things, because you deal with so much narrative and cliche around this, around what men and women are supposed to want and what they have wanted historically.
Exactly.
And there's so much nuance for men and women and what they need in a relationship for that to click. And there's so many health considerations and there's so many societal situations currently. So I can't actually answer if all things were ideal in absolute neutral, everybody was doing great, there was no stress, whose sex drive would be higher and whose wouldn't. I don't know.
I think it would be even.
I can't even answer the question. I don't know.
I'm just guessing. I think it would be even.
Yeah.
Because I think so many of, let's call them barriers to desire, they're not necessarily biological. They're not just like, I just completely reject the idea that men are more sexual than women, and men naturally want more sex. Even if there's research that comes out to prove it, I'm going to disagree.
So you stand by your guns. Yeah, I can't speak to the sexual word is catching me as well. Like,
that's fair.
I have observed.
Yeah.
The narrative for me in my head is that it's easier for men to engage in sex. There's a lot less needed for them. They don't necessarily need to feel safe because they probably feel safe all the time.
Yeah.
See, this is a nuance. So maybe that's the reason. I don't know if that's the reason, or do we naturally want to have more sex? Or is it that we just don't feel as vulnerable and we don't need to have that emotional need met as much? That's a story that I see anyway, that a lot of men seem to not have to have the emotional need met.
Yeah.
And a lot of women seem to need a lot more of the emotional need met.
Yeah.
But I don't know, all things considered, is that the way?
I think there's definitely truth in that, but I think it is presented online again, often by sometimes kind of alpha male influencers who are pushing this idea that men are more sexual and men are naturally non-monogamous, which is another one I'm just not, I don't think, again, men are any more, I think this is way more complex than men are this and women are that.
Yeah.
And I think the minute you try and say one is this and one is that, you're kind of losing so many people. And on talking about shame, I have met many men who do find it actually slower to get turned on. They do need to feel safe, emotional safety, where maybe they don't feel respected by their partner. They don't feel seen by their partner. They don't feel appreciated. And they're finding it very hard then to, find that physical urge to have sex. And the shame is so heavy on them because they have been told their whole life that men are like kind of these sex machines that are up for it whenever.
Yeah.
And men are always pursuing it. And often it's men telling them that. So it's men like shooting other men in the foot. I don't know what kind of phrase to use. It's, you know what I mean? Now women can buy into it too. But when I see these male influencers, I'm like, you're not helping any men here. You're selling them this idea that they should be, that they're naturally just like more ready and more, more sexual. And I just think that actually causes more harm than good.
I definitely agree with you on that. I definitely agree that it causes more harm than good, because most times, again, generalization. Sorry for the generalizations, but in my
you kind of have to when you're talking about
stuff like this. Yeah. What I've observed is a lot of the people who gravitate towards these messages online, whether they be men or women, if they're gravitating towards a particularly toxic message, a message like that, they're usually someone who doesn't feel good. So you have this alpha male in this example, influencer, saying, we're naturally like this all the time. And this guy going, well, I'm not, so maybe I have to be.
Yeah.
And they just try and bypass all the emotional stuff and the physical stuff and go, well, I'm supposed to do this. There was a great, now I haven't seen any of his stuff lately. He's apparently done a complete, Neil Strauss is his name.
Okay.
He's done a complete 180 apparently. But he released this book. I'm not saying the book was great. It was such an interesting psychological experiment to watch his career progress. The book was called The Game. Did you ever hear
I've heard of it.
I can tell by your reaction, you know exactly what
No,
it's
I
about.
haven't read it, so I shouldn't judge, but...
Pick up Artistry.
Yeah.
I read it, right?
Yeah.
Just to see what is all this about. I'm not trying to make excuses here. I was in a healthy, committed relationship. I read it because there's all these lads were talking about this book, and I read it. When I read it, it was the saddest book I've ever read in my life. I was like, oh my God. And I was a kid when I read this, like I was in my early 20s. And this just seems to me like a really desperate way to bypass all of the things that actually make you attractive to somebody. I know. Negging is a term for insulting somebody so they feel insecure, so they're more likely to want approval off you. I'm like, this is so...
It's manipulation.
It is pure manipulation. And it worked.
Yeah.
And it worked because you were dealing with vulnerable people. And you had vulnerable people then dealing with vulnerable people. Yeah. And so you have the blind leading the blind here.
Yeah.
And they get the outcome they think they wanted, which was they get to have sex with this woman.
Yeah, and that's it.
But apparently, now I must go and do some more research, Neil Strauss has come around on this and he's completely admitted what that was, and it was trying to game the system rather than actually trying to become the type of person who is attractive.
Yeah.
And by that means you're going to attract somebody who's genuinely interested in you as a person.
Yeah.
And then the sense of connection you're going to have with this person, whether it's physical or emotional, is going to be much deeper. But that message from a lot of these alpha, it seems to do more harm than... It seems to worsen the cause of, I mean, when you mentioned incels earlier on, but even if somebody isn't in the incel community, just a vulnerable person who gets this message saying, if you do these, you're supposed to do these things because we as, for example, men are naturally more sexual. You just ignore all the things that could potentially help increase your libido, your desire, your drive.
Yeah.
And you start to act out these behaviors, and then there's another person on the other side of that behavior, a potential partner, and then they respond to you acting out, and they potentially respond in a less than helpful way for themselves. So then you have this mess that we have nowadays, and I genuinely think that's a lot of the problem.
Yeah, and they're not authentic relationships.
No.
They're built off of like tricking people. It's funny because I was getting loads of this content recently aimed at me, and I don't know why. But it was for women. So it was like, oh, here's how you make him text you back. Here's how you become his muse. That's what I kept hearing, a muse.
Yeah.
And now that stuff, just the minute I see it, I'm like, oh, like I hate it. I hate this concept of either way, of this idea of tricking, kind of like luring someone in. For what? Like what's like your goal here is so, I don't know. I think if you're genuinely just trying to, I don't know, attract a billionaire, right? And that's your goal, fine, that probably might work, right? But if your goal is to be happy and have a happy relationship, like that, it just kind of, these vulnerable people that maybe are seeing this, and as women and girls seeing that of like, you have to stay interesting to him, you know, you have to make him chase you and blah, 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 blah.
Same kind of thing.
It's the same kind of thing. Like now it's funny because it was men giving the instructions. Isn't that interesting? I don't know. I think that's a weird one.
No comment.
Yeah, it was it was a bit, and they were then giving me the creeps because I was like, oh, I just don't like this. You mentioned that book there. I would say anyone who is either a woman or who has sex with women or wants to have sex with women, read Come As You Are by Emily Nagoski. That is an amazing book. It is more about women, but if you have women in your life, you're attracted to women. It explains desire in such a scientific way, but be accessible way. And I think it can help bridge the gap of knowledge there a lot between, again, I'm being very like how male sexuality works, how female, because I don't think it's that binary at all.
No.
I think a lot of it's from conditioning. And also just to say that women can contribute to this as well. Like when a man struggles to get erect, women will often say, is it because you're not attracted to me? And they'll get really upset. And I understand that reaction because we're taught that men will always want it.
Fair.
There's something wrong if they don't.
Yeah.
Men will always be chasing you around the place. So we're being fed lies on both sides. But then when women make it about themselves, that makes the man who is struggling to have an erection feel really guilty and shame on top of maybe just he might be having a natural physical reaction because he just doesn't feel...
Or one of the thousands of men we saw in the clinic who it's a
millions of reasons.
There's medical issues going on here
exactly.
as well.
So the shame, no matter what the issue is, I find whether it's someone who has erectile issues or who has a woman who has pelvic floor pain or difficulty having sex, it's the sprinkling of shame on top that is doing the real harm. Because actually our body, there's many reasons why our bodies might be struggling to make the things happen to have sex.
Yeah.
But it's then when it's the cultural messaging that makes us feel shit about it.
Yes.
And that's where we make each other feel shit about it. We make ourselves feel shit about it. We don't talk about it then. And
it's back to the point we keep making is this is happening online because generally if you walked into a room and someone expressed this to you, you'd probably make them feel safe and you'd be compassionate and you'd try and help them and understand.
Yeah.
But we don't have a lot of that anymore. We don't have that deep community-based trust where you can say it to your friend. I won't speak for women. I can't speak for women, obviously, but I've heard from a lot of the women in my life that female community support element that we all... Sure, women have all their friends. Isn't necessarily what we think it is anymore. A lot of women feel isolated. A lot of women don't have close friends. There's a big movement at the moment about male loneliness, which is absolutely real. And speaking about female loneliness doesn't take away from male loneliness as well. They're both problems.
Yeah.
But I observe a lot of female loneliness too. A lot of women without close friends.
Yeah.
And that is an important social support system. Emotional support system.
Completely. And I see that in my work where like I, again, work with so many women and we'll be talking about whatever issue it is they're having. Maybe they've never had an orgasm or maybe they've vaginismus or some condition that I had before. It kind of stops you having sex or makes sex painful. And I'll be the first person they've told. Or maybe the first person outside their GP and their partner. Like they don't feel they can talk to their friends. Thankfully, I feel like I've been really, maybe I'm just an open book. So I just attract maybe I'm putting that energy out. Like I really do have very supportive female friends and I don't know what I would do without them. So I can't imagine not having them. And a lot of women don't. And a lot of men don't as well. And I think, again, I suppose the worry there, you touched on the loneliness side of things. I suppose how would I put this? Are men lonelier than women? I don't know. I'm not fully sold that they are. I think there's loneliness across the board,
whether
right?
they're who cares?
Exactly.
Women are lonely.
But do you know the
men
way
are lonely.
It's very much male loneliness.
Yeah.
We keep hearing about male loneliness, which is fair enough, right? Like, I don't want anyone feeling lonely and it's a horrible feeling. I think these men that are feeling so lonely, they're being, what's the word? They're being tricked and trapped by the likes of the Tates and Andrew Tates and Incel and that side of things. Women that feel lonely, I don't know, are they being targeted in the same way? I don't think they are ending up, that loneliness doesn't become as destructive. I don't really know why. I guess when you mentioned earlier something really funny, these influencers say this is how you be a man and this is how to be a man. And you're dead right. I agree. This is why so many people are clicking and men are like, okay, tell me. I have never, ever, ever been told what it means to be a woman. Ever. I've never even had the discussion. I've never even thought about what it means to be a woman. I truly haven't. So I can't imagine, why do we need why do men need people to tell them how to be a man? I find it really interesting. What has gone wrong that we need to specifically say this is how you are a man? Aside from the trad wife stuff, right? Because they are like, your job is to procreate and, serve your husband. Apart from that stuff, we are not told explicitly how to be a woman. Now, we receive lots of indirect messages, mostly more about our appearance, though, and how to be desirable, which isn't really how to be a woman. That's how to be a sexy woman or a desirable woman. But men are told, I just find it so interesting. Like, where has masculinity become so confusing, if that makes, like...
I think again, my opinion, going back to our previous conversation, I think the language is the issue for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I think what it is to be a man encapsulates how to regulate your emotions.
Okay.
How to manage your physical capabilities, how to feel a sense of purpose, respect, which is what a lot of men want to feel. What is respect and how does that show up in your relationship?
Yes.
How do you interact with a partner? How do you interact with another man?
Yeah.
The messaging we get, which mightn't be as obvious to a woman, is money, car, big job.
Yeah.
That's a man.
Status,
It's pure status. And for women, the visual thing is a female status game because you are more attractive or more desirable, and that's what it is to be, quote unquote, a woman. Whereas as a man, you're more dominant and you're more respected and you drive a bigger car and you have more money and you have a nicer suit.
Yeah.
Whereas in the optics of it, the equivalent message for women seems to be you have a nicer body, you have better hair, so it's different and it's as insidious for men. But I don't think this should be a violin kind of thing. For me, it's an understanding thing.
I don't think so either.
Yeah, and I fully acknowledge the emotional damage this does to men and women.
100%.
But I think it's very hard. I actually had a question to ask you on what you think about this, because I'm asking a lot of people now, do you think it's possible, or do you think it should be men and women trying to have, as you know, I'm really trying to get my message here properly. Grace is struggling to deal with me at the moment. I want to make sure I really clearly communicate this question.
Okay.
There is so much confusion and friction
around
these conversations we're having because men are infiltrating women's spaces, as you've said. And in some spaces, it's not as common, but some women have an issue with men talking about male issues. I often think, should men and women have their spaces that we don't try and fix the other person, that we try and work on the stuff that we're dealing with? If we're feeling lonely as men, if we're feeling emasculated, if we're feeling lack of respect, let's work on this together and let's see, can we come up and let's acknowledge that other people, women, other people in the world have things that we can directly impact and affect. And how do we show up there? Let's completely acknowledge that. But for me, it starts with us. This is why I do this, the podcast. I'm trying to learn more. And I'm struggling to put pieces together sometimes. But I think if I can show up more for people in my life, not just women and kids, but other people, I'll contribute more. And a lot of that comes from how I show up for myself. We talked about relationship with self at the start. Do you think sometimes trying to have, and I know the conversation is important, but trying to fix it all up here is causing a lot of this friction because you just get pushed back online, and this is where people are getting information. Whereas if we had a lot more of these spaces, I don't mean men-only spaces or women-only spaces, but emotional spaces where we can have conversations and learning how to, because I've been in groups of men, I've been in men's group and groups of men. They're different things.
Right,
and I don't think either of them necessarily hit the mark. I think there's issues with both. I haven't been in female spaces. So I don't know what that's like, but I feel like I show up as a better person when I have had the opportunity to be vulnerable with other men specifically, and women in different contexts. Women give me context and important lessons that I can't get from men, but I show up better. I show up healthier, more balanced, more regulated, and more aware of how I'm interfacing with another person. What is your opinion on that? I'm just quickly going to check the time because my clock has stopped, so I don't know where we are. Okay, we're okay.
We're okay.
The work that we all need to do, is it practical? Trying to fix the message up here right now, because you gave me a really lovely perspective on working with children, and you have young people. You have a limited amount of time. So
Yeah.
you're doing what's really practical.
Yeah.
And you're dealing with what will work the most right now, what's the
Yeah.
highest point of leverage.
Yes.
I would love a situation where we could all sit down and it could be on Instagram and podcast and we could do what we're doing right now and have a really open back and forth conversation where we're exploring and I'm learning, and I would love that. It doesn't seem to work because it causes a lot of polarization among the minority. The type of person to write a comment on an Instagram post is not the type of person to sit down necessarily and have a deep, engaged conversation.
Yeah.
It's the vocal minority.
Yeah.
I've asked a really, really long-winded question there, but what would an ideal for you be, and what would a practical solution for you be going forward to try and on a larger scale, because you're doing incredible work one-to-one and one-to-couple and one-to-many in some cases, but on a larger scale, how should we move forward with this as a culture, as a society,
That's
as
such
people?
a good question. Yeah. I mean, the first thing I suppose I'm thinking of is we probably need to focus on the generations below us, because they are the future. And, when you describe those spaces of doing the work of maybe reflecting on how am I showing up? How can I show up better? How does my behavior or my power, I think we need to have conversations about power as well. Like, how does the power I hold impact others? From a young age, understanding that would be amazing, God, like, it's such a big question.
Yeah.
Like, I think what you've described of that idea of those spaces sounds great. And I think there is room for, and I suppose I don't want to be exclusionary. So when I say women, I include trans women in that, just to say that off the bat. Anyone who is navigating the world as a woman. Having women-only spaces or men-only spaces, as in, spaces to have these conversations, not just like...
Yeah, I don't mean like men's clubs and women's clubs. I just mean a collection.
Yeah.
We're working on the same problem.
Yeah.
And I find sometimes, sorry to cut across now,
No,
but when we're trying to work on each other's problems, it takes the focus off our problem. I know as a human being, I'd rather work on your problem than my problem.
Yeah.
It's easier for me because I don't have to go into the scary stuff. Whereas if I'm surrounded by people who share the emotional depth of my problem, even though it's going to be nuanced and there's going to be specifics that aren't shared, we might get a lot more work done because I've nowhere really to kind of hide or finger point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, some of these spaces, they go the opposite way. I know that. But.
Yeah, that's true. I think... See, you're touching on something with me here that I know mightn't be like the answer. No, because I know you're not the person who's like, I need this answer.
No.
This mightn't be the answer you want.
Just interested in your perspective on it.
Yeah, my knee-jerk reaction is I think women are already doing a lot to help men's causes. Sorry, I do. I do think women show up to more protests generally, and like they work much more in healthcare generally speaking and in nurturing and all of those roles. There's obviously women causing a lot of carnage and stuff as well. Men showing up for women's causes, I really struggle with how little men show up for women's causes. Marching for the referendum, things like that. There were loads of men who did, don't get me wrong, and they're fantastic, but there should have been more. I feel there should be more. And I think, and I know what you mean. I know there needs to be this space where like you kind of need to work out your own stuff first before you're trying to solve any. I totally get that. I think some of this could be worked out in relationships, where heterosexual relationships, where like we're more than just partners. We actually like act like allies to each other. Like, I remember when that poor girl, like Aisling Murphy, died a few years ago, and I was going to a vigil, and I was like, "Oh, do you want me to come with you?" Like, I've never been asked that by a partner before, and I know it sounds like a bare minimum thing, but I was delighted. But we went, and there was hardly any men there. And I was like, oh, we need men at this. It would have heartened me more to see men there, because I'm like, you're seeing our pain in this. You're seeing any of us could have been Aisling. I know I'm using a really sad example, but like, I think sometimes some men are like, but we don't know what to do. And I'm like, sometimes a lot of us, if we sit down just like you and I, and we're not online fucking firing out comments, we actually just want you to listen and to show up, like even to the vigils or the marches, and just to listen. And that would be incredibly helpful, I think. And maybe some men aren't there yet, where maybe they still see this as nothing to do with me. And I think that's where, as you said, those spaces come in to be like, actually, this does have something to do with me. Again, I'm not the person going out doing these horrible things, but I could show up a bit more for the women in my life just by doing something like that. Am I making sense?
Yeah, you're making sense. Yeah, and I have no particular objection to anything you're saying there.
Yeah.
I have the male perspective of resistance to the resistance comes from what I explained earlier on, is that there's a deep, unsettled, emotional turmoil
Okay.
that's triggered
Yeah.
when anything else. A lot of men are struggling with their own stuff, right?
Yes, of course.
And if there's something else, they don't see it as, oh, here's something. Now, I'm sorry, I'm really generalizing here.
Yeah.
In my conversations, right, there's a lot of men who I would call really, really good men who, not making excuses that they don't know. They do know. They do know they want to show up, but are caught in their own heads.
Yeah.
And from working in the medical world, I know a lot of that has to do with them generally just not feeling good, but it's not an excuse.
Yeah.
So this is the bridge I'm trying to cross here.
Of course, yeah.
Everybody can't wait until everybody feels amazing to we start making some changes.
Yeah.
So I don't have any objection to what you said there. I don't have any resistance to that at all. I know I have an inkling why it's very difficult, and I know that's not an excuse that can be used.
Yeah.
So this is why I say we're in this mess at the moment where there's not enough communication.
Yeah.
I think that's the problem.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the communication like that, like something you just said there, is being overshadowed by the really aggressive version of what you just said there, where the message might be the same. Because when that poor girl Aisling was murdered, the message was the same. We need you to show up. We need help. We need support. And a lot of the message was by the vocal minority of really, really aggressive delivery, and it caused a really, really immediate resistance. I know as a man, one of my first go-tos is defensiveness.
Okay, yeah,
I know that.
Yeah.
Someone challenges me emotionally, I do not like that because I can't emotionally regulate very well. So I get really, really defensive.
I'm sure you can, Dan.
I'm learning how, right? And I'm very open about this. I've been learning how.
Yeah.
Because I've been aware that the more I do that, the better my life is, the better my relationships are.
100%.
Because everybody feels a little bit better. And so that's
and
one
you
thing
feel
I work
better.
on.
Yeah,
I feel way better. Way better. So I should have started with that. But I do know that my first response in most cases where I'm challenged emotionally is defensiveness. So when the vocal minority is aggressive, the majority of a lot of people on the other side will take that really, really directly and go, no, that's nothing to do with me, and shut down. So it's not optimal. It's not healthy. It's not right. Yeah. But it's an observation I've had.
And I think I do get that, and I see that's a very human reaction as well. If there is that kind of aggression, I think there is some space, I think, for, I suppose there's a difference between aggression and being really impassioned, and it depends what language the person is using and what. Like, I get it, right?
You're right.
But like, I think there is space for that. Like, I think we need women. We need to allow women to be angry. I just think we need to let women be angry. And you agree with that. I know you do.
I agree with that, yeah.
And I think sometimes, yes, that anger is probably sometimes going to be pointed in a direction that might feel uncomfortable. But and I'm not condoning any like, nasty behavior or name calling or like anything really pointed. But as I said, usually it's not. It's actually more about like, it's from a place of sadness again and worry and kind of being a bit frightened and whatnot and frustrated. Some of the, let's say, women who are quite aggressive, unfortunately, they do get stuff done. So we kind of need some of them because there's only so much the nice approach sometimes can feel a bit like, well, they're still not feckin' listening, right? And I know that's not right, but sometimes it feels that way. Sometimes it feels that no one is actually listening. And I think that's why there is some space for maybe just get the anger out a little bit. It's unfortunate when maybe it is, I don't know, it's online and then it is causing people to get defensive, because I do get that. Like, I understand why that would happen. Look, there's no easy answer to it, I think. Like,
it's so interesting. Most of what we talked about, almost everything comes back to communication.
No, it does. Yeah.
Whether it's on a social scale, a social media scale, a global scale, a relationship scale, a self-communication scale, it's the oldest cliche in the book. The key to a good relationship is good
But
communication.
it is, and I think within communication, sometimes people talk loads and they think they're a good communicator. That doesn't make you a good communicator. I think within communication, it's vulnerability and empathy, like, are two things hugely that if you're communicating without vulnerability, what's the point?
It's very surface level.
Yeah, you're kind of saying what you think you should say, maybe. And that can be happening a lot, where I'm sure you've met them, people who've done loads of therapy, but the therapist always seems to agree with what they said. And you're like, I don't know, are you being either completely honest or are you listening to what they're not necessarily doing the work outside of the therapy. And I think with communication, it's that as well. It's not just about having the conversations. It's having them, it's really showing up quite raw to them until you feel a bit safer showing up to them. And I think it's great to be able to talk even with this, like you being a man and me being a woman in this setting, because I will admit I don't actually have a whole lot of male friends, straight male friends. It's not a conscious decision. It's just the way kind of things have happened in my life. And that's a shame. And I think a lot of women I know would have the same. I don't know, do you have a lot of female friends, or do you, like most of my friends who are male are gay. And obviously my brother and my dad and my partner's friends, and that's all great. And they're great and care deeply about them. And I very much care about men's mental health and men's loneliness. And I really reject the idea that women don't care, because I see that a lot. We do care. We just have a lot going on. And like, it is hard to show up, just like you said with men, it is hard when, I suppose maybe with women, from my point of view, maybe we're dealing with quite visceral threats to our safety. That is a very real thing that you live with. And there is mental labour in navigating the world. You know, even today I'm thinking, what time am I getting home to the airport car park? I'll park the car close just in case it's dark by that time. Now it won't be because it's summer, so it's great. I get more hours in public because it's summer. But small things, you know. So that's a lot of energy. That's a lot. And I think sometimes then it's when you hear women don't care, I'm like, oh my God, we do. And we're doing so much, I think, most of us, for the men that are in our lives. But like, if I'm showing up for my brother and my partner and my dad, and I'm showing up for all these, I'm probably not having time to show up for a random man who's commenting on my Instagram saying that women don't care. I don't have anything to give that person. So that person needs to kind of go connect with real people. I went on a tangent there.
No, it's
what
okay.
Was I even saying?
And I like that, because it's kind of echoing. You can maybe see where I'm coming from there with the male conversation. It's not that men in general don't care. And again, I'm not speaking from men here. I'm not speaking for myself. And don't necessarily interface with the world this way. But it's that it's not optimal at the moment with everybody. And there are different challenges, and in some cases there are more dire circumstances, and it's usually for women, so they have a lot more to think about from that perspective. And then men are feeling quite vulnerable because they're misinterpreting a message coming from women. And like I said, when I sit in a room with men and women, for the most part, it's amazing. There's a beautiful interaction, and opinions are shared, and it's very rare. Unless, and again, it's usually somebody who's really hurting will have an issue and try and stir the pot. In most cases, in my actual real life interface with the world, relations between men and women are amazing. But that's not how we interact anymore. So we have to be really aware of that. And we have these conversations online, and there are these messages and these people. So it just complicates things for us.
It does.
And for me, I'm not here to try and argue with anybody. I think it's such a shame that we have that these have to be debated, and they have to be, it has to be made aware because there's no awareness around it. That's a shame to me. Because if in this ideal world that we keep talking about, hopefully we'll get there one day, we would just identify these areas and work together to try and overcome them. And again, I'm not that I'm a fan, but I'm interested in like evolutionary science and evolutionary biology and evolutionary psychology and how we used to interface and work together. But I don't necessarily think you can just translate that over to how we live now, because when we lived in tribes, all the women did a certain job and all that, but it's not how we live anymore. So we've got modern challenges which require modern solutions, and I think we're resisting that a little bit. I'm speaking for myself now, and men in general here, but I think in general we resist that a little bit, and it's slowing us down from actually interfacing.
Absolutely. And you know, the evolutionary stuff, because sometimes you hear the alpha men twisting this stuff, and it drives me bananas, because like there's actually more evidence now showing that A, women actually did do some of the hunting. B, obviously, I mean, a lot of the time maybe they couldn't because they were probably having babies half the time, no contraception, whatever, totally different times. But also that, you know, the, what's it called? Hunting, gatherer, you know, the gathering of whatever, the berries and the herbs and whatever. Apparently that made up actually the majority of sustenance. So like women's roles were just as important as men's, but like, again, these, I don't even want to call them masculine influences, because again, I don't see them as masculine. Sorry, I see them as like
but that's the simple point I was making. That's not healthy masculinity.
Like a cartoonish idea of masculinity. They kind of warp these evolutionary stuff of, oh, men are naturally this and women are, and you're like, number one, I think there's not a whole load of science to back up some of what they're saying. And number two, even if they're just twisting stuff to suit, as you said, this modern life where it's like, why are we talking about that? We're in a totally different time. And if we want to get really, which I won't go down this path because then this will just totally put us off the rails, but just to mention, I think if we get really like existential and like zoom way out, like this is also capitalism, like this is living under capitalism. And this is, you know, when you say women have a lot going on, men have a lot going on, a lot of us are in survival mode of trying to live in this absolute like batshit economy of like, I don't even need to explain the situation these days with, now it's not even that women can work, it's most women have to work, and both people in a household have to work. And the situation, it's just getting harder and harder to just maintain like a normal life. Like it takes an awful lot to have like what we would consider in the West as like a normal, like balanced life. So we're wrecked, like men and women, we're all, people of all genders, we're all fairly exhausted. I don't know the solution to that at all, but you know, just redo the whole world. But why was I saying that? Yeah, just that kind of disconnect again, I think. And I think that profits all these billionaires that own these apps and own all these platforms is that divisiveness and that clickbait. And if you put a title on this podcast and say,
it's going to be so clickbaity.
Yeah, sex expert says men are trash. It's going to get way more clicks than sex expert says, actually, a lot of men are great. You know, like, it's the way it's all built as well. And it's so fucked. Like, I get so angry about it sometimes because I'm like, we're just being hoodwinked in so many ways. And we're losing that person-to-person community and connection that is very concerning.
Do you know what? I actually love that you got there.
Yeah.
I'm gonna bring it to an end. I've no idea. We're probably way over time, but I've no idea where we are. But I didn't expect this to go down this route at all.
I know.
But I'm delighted it did. And I love how you brought it there at the end, because ultimately I agree with you. I agree with you. When I talk to people about health and all these different ideas about empowerment and mental health and the stuff I like to talk about on the podcast, and this particular issue about interrelation between people, not even men and women, between people, how we interact with each other and interface. You are 100% correct. Without putting the giant tinfoil hat on, just a small tinfoil hat.
Yeah.
When we zoom out and look at the way the world works, we're forced into this kind of individualism, this
100%.
state of I need to win at all costs. And all costs at the moment means you and you and you and my partner and my kids and everybody. When we tell ourselves we're doing this for all of these noble reasons, but we're not. We're doing it because this is the way the system is designed at the moment.
Yeah.
And without being nihilist about it and without being really alarmist about this whole thing, I think once we understand that, it gives us a little bit of perspective and potentially, if this is what you want, can allow us to step out and start doing a little bit of that self-work. Because it kind of all, for me, it always comes back to that.
Yeah.
What can I do? Not to try and win at all costs, but what can I do to make sure that the people that I interact with have a better experience of me?
Yeah.
Whoever those people are. As I said, my clients, my friends, my parents, my children, my partner. How can I show up in a way that makes them happier, healthier, safer? Can I educate them? Can I help them with something? Can I just be a safer, more... I often think now with my kids, I think how and this was jail completely taught me this, there's nothing to do for me, but how do they experience me? Where it used to be, how am I experiencing this situation?
Yeah.
If they're getting upset or kicking off or something's happening, it used to be like, I'm annoyed. Yeah. That's all about me. Yeah. Whereas what I'm trying to do now, and it's an active process, this is not natural to me, but how are they experiencing me? Are they seeing me as, oh, daddy's angry? Yeah. Or, oh, daddy's frustrated, or daddy doesn't like us doing this, or am I a calming influence?
Yes.
Am I safe? Do they come to me to get a hug? How do they see me? And then from that, I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm not going to do this with other people. How does that man on the road experience me? How does that woman on the street that I mentioned walking up behind her in the dark, how does she experience? It just reframed me. And I have this, I think I probably drew it. It's on the previous page.
Okay.
Everyone's sick of this, me saying this now, but this is me, this is you. This is somebody else. This is somebody else. This is my partner.
Yes.
This is the work that I'm doing. It's your Venn diagram.
Yeah.
It's essentially your Venn diagram. So for people who can't see this, these are essentially small dots with gradually increasing circles, and the circles eventually overlap. Yeah. And if the overlap is where we interface. But if somebody is in a less fortunate position than me, and I can do a little bit more work, eventually I can have a positive influence in their circle. Yeah. And then their circle might grow to have a positive influence on somebody else. So I don't think it's going to be a top-down approach where they're going to change the system and they're going to start educating us on emotional resilience, because why would they?
Yeah.
What does that serve?
Yeah.
Doesn't make
no.
us
No, that would
work
not
any
be
harder
good.
in the factories, you know?
Yes, exactly. Well, that's it.
Whereas
Yeah,
if we
yeah,
have a
yeah.
bottoms-up approach,
Yeah.
which starts with me ultimately,
Yeah.
but now I'm framing it as how do I show up in the world? How do I serve other people? How do I how do I stop getting so angry? How do I stop getting so frustrated? If I am lonely, what am I doing that's causing this? Not that everything is my fault,
Yeah.
which again, Rena showed me, and I had Katrina Sullivan on the podcast, and she talked about like some people don't have that opportunity, but I do.
Yeah.
And a lot of my friends do. So how can I show up a little bit better? So I'm delighted you mentioned that, because zooming out, it's not about friction between men and women necessarily. That's a symptom, I think.
Yeah.
Of a bigger issue.
Oh, definitely. And it's like all the people at the top, like they benefit from us pointing the finger at each other, at
Divide and
immigrants,
conquer.
at trans people. Trans people have suddenly become the scapegoat for everything that's going wrong in the world, and they make up like 1% of the population and just want to live their lives. You know, and you just the attitudes from some people are like, where are you getting this from? So like, you know, it does trickle down, as you said. So in a world where we can't just like, I mean, we can control, and I am quite passionate about this, you should research who you're voting for, and you should think about where you're putting your money and things like that, like absolutely. But like we can't obviously just like that restructure the whole system and, you know, get rid of all the billionaires, whatever. So start, you know, okay, what can I do? What can I control? And like asking each other, like, what would help? What do you need? Like even my partner that day asking to go to the vigil, like that was like such a small thing. And I was like, oh, that's actually gave me a bit of hope on such a sad day. Like that's given me a bit of, you know, so it doesn't have to be donating your whole life to a cause or abandoning everything. No, you need to do your stuff and you have your own life. But like thinking of us all on our own little planets with our own little orbits, it can be a bit too individualistic, as you said, like at times we get a bit lost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Grace Alice, I'm gonna bring this one home.
I feel like I didn't talk half enough about sex and stuff. But people can find me.
Where can people find you?
Yes. Well, I have my own podcast called The G Spot, which is all
about
sex, intimacy, all those things. And gracealice.com is my website. You can kind of find everything there. And I'm on Instagram, Grace Alice Ó'Sé. So they would be the main
amazing
points.
Any exciting projects in the pipeline we should know there?
The podcast is the main project, really. So, like loads of work goes into that. I'm not sure when this is coming out, but season 3 is currently coming out.
This will be this week or next week.
Grand.
Very
okay,
quick
so
turnaround.
we're in the middle of releasing season
Amazing.
3, so it's fresh off the shelves. There's loads of bonus eps as well. But I do have something coming. I'm hoping later in the year, which is going to be fabulous, and loads of people are going to benefit from it. And
Amazing.
I'm not going to say anything else.
Okay, don't want to give anything away.
Keep an eye on my Instagram and my website.
And can people reach out if they're interested in maybe working with you?
Yeah, of course. So again, my website is best, gracealice.com. You can actually just straight up book a session, or you can like email me, message me through there. Either way you can contact me through the site.
Amazing. Grace, really enjoyed today, even though I went way off script.
did I.
I really enjoyed it. But like, to be honest with you, what I was really interested in was your opinion on a lot of things.
Yeah.
Because your expertise is clear for everybody to see. Like it's incredible work that you're doing, and it's really, really needed. But I'm really interested in your opinion, because sometimes I find we have these conversations or we see these people online and we get the expertise, but I want to know how you think. Because and not just as a man and a woman having this conversation, as somebody who is specifically doing work with people who are expressing issues that they're having or vulnerabilities that they're having. I think if I'm to take a lesson from everything we said today about social media, I want to do a lot less of identifying a problem and having my answer for it, and just more listening. And that's not to say that I'm going to agree with everything I hear, but just like if someone's expressing something to me, maybe listen. And see what that thing is, because they're not saying it for no reason. There's probably a reason there. Thank you so much, Grace, for your time
welcome.
today.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed it. I don't know how long this podcast is going to be.
I'll stop talking now.
Really enjoyed that, and hope to see you soon.
That was great. Yeah, thank you.
My friends, thank you so much for listening to that episode of the podcast with Grace Alice Ó'Sé. I really enjoyed that conversation. If you enjoyed it too, please feel free to leave us a rating or a review on whatever platform you're listening on. And you can actually leave a comment now on Spotify if you're listening there. So feel free to let us know what you think. Thank you again to Grace for being so generous with her time in that episode. And thank you once again for listening. I will see you all in the next episode.